Hey everybody, this is David Skrika. So we're gonna talk about some things here today. So I'm gonna have kind of a tongue-in-cheek funny video in that I'm gonna ask if Doge can save the US. So the Doge, by the way, I'm talking about is not the Dogecoin or Dogecoin or whatever the hell it's called, right? It's like this department that Swami and Musk are going to head to kind of dismantle the U.S. bureaucracy. Which, by the way, I totally agree with. Like, I'm a libertarian, so I agree. Like, there's about $2 trillion in non-discretionary spending. I would just get rid of all of it myself. A lot of the stuff the states could do, like, or 80 to 90% of it. Like, I do agree with, like, NOAA, does the hurricane tracking, stuff like that. But these are smaller departments. Like FEMA, you could just move over to the military, right? I'd rather have the military taking care of crises anyhow. So there's all these different departments, you can combine, you can do whatever, right? So there's a lot of like government waste out there. We all know that a lot of like useless like government bureaucracies, etc. So I agree with it. So when I first looked at this, I was like, oh wow, things might really start happening. This is it's got to be in place by July 2026. And then I realized no, it's the recommendations that have to be in place by July 2026. So this is not going to happen anytime soon. And like I've talked about a million times, we're got a debt of over 120% of GDP. The deficit this year alone is going to be about $2 trillion, and the same for next year. We're running out of time before a debt crisis happens. And I still contend the only way anything real is going to happen here is basically um, there has to be some kind of debt crisis or some kind of economic crisis. Look at Argentina. Mealy has cut a third of sorry, 10% of he's fired 10% of all bureaucrats. He's like cut like dozens of ministries, I think 30 ministries. That's the kind of thing that has to happen. Why is it happening? Because Argentina has had hyperinflation for years. Their economy has been a disaster for years. People are just basically fed up, right? He's gotten inflation down from 25-30% a month to about 2 to 3% a month. So it's still annualized, 20-30% a year, but that's a hell of an improvement. And it's probably going to be going on the way to a normalized, 4 or 5% in a year or two. But he had to do drastic measures. And I don't think we're ready for that yet. Like, remember, the one reason we have almost 3% economic growth in the United States is that the deficit is nearly 7% of GDP, right? And GDP, the government is 25-30% of the economy. So those deficits kind of drive growth in the short term, even though it's not sustainable. I think everyone knows that, like, if you spent $7 to make three in your life, you're going to be bankrupt sooner rather than later, right? So we all know that. So like that's what they're doing with GDP right now, like, or let's say like this, like let's say you spend $700,000 a year and you made 300,000. We all know that's not sustainable. That's what's kind of going on with GDP and borrowing. So in the short term, I still think like look, when the dollar goes up, I know a lot of people just think it's kind of like, oh, it's a super positive thing, money's moving to the States, but a lot of times it's just a sign of global liquidity. And it's kind of similar right now to what happened in 2007. You can see what happened in 2007. There was this move up when Trump won, and then it started declining all the way of 2018 into 2017 and 2018. And you can see, I think we break this 1750. We can go back to these highs of 2022. When do those highs hit? Essentially, when the stock market bottomed. Why? The dollar is really a sign of global liquidity. Look at the 2000s here, right? During the big boom, and then when everything crashed, dollar rallied, right? In 2014, there was a correction, the oil tank, dollar rallied, right? When basically COVID, when QE ended, right? Look at COVID. Look at that little spike in the dollar then. Again, it's a sign of tightening global liquidity. So if this dollar moves up, it doesn't mean that the U.S. is the strongest. Let's be sure. It means that probably global liquidity is tightening, and that's probably not positive going forward for the stock market. And my issue with this whole thing with Musk and Swami is, here's the deal. Like we talked about interest rates backing up. The bond did rally a little bit today. You can see it was down up a little bit, but you can see we're not really high that much off these recent lows. and rates have backed up a bit. And Powell basically said there was no hurry for no more rate cuts. So for more rate cuts, sorry. So like, who knows what's going to happen in December now? He might be doing that just to kind of like, trying to show Trump who's boss, So that's kind of the issue we have right now is that what I think is going to happen ultimately, with this is I still think they're going to do a budget next year because remember the tax cuts expire, so they're going to have to do a budget. And this budget is going to have a lot of tax cuts, similar to what happened in the UK in 2022. And I'll show you the pound right now. Um, yeah, there's British pound, US dollar, and you can see. Oh, we're going to get this. We'll get the chart here. Sorry, 3-year chart is. You can see right here, and go up. Right here, and then going up here, and yet see that was it. That was when the Brits basically did a budget that had a lot of tax cuts with no spending cuts to correlate with it, and the pound completely fell apart. And look, it was going to crash, and the British central bank had to come in. The ECB had to come in and print money. You see the pound's actually done pretty well since then. Basically you went to 104 and then went as high as 134. Now it's at 127. So that's what I think something like this is going to happen in the US. And if like, 1 second. Okay. Here's the 10-year treasury in the UK, which will show the same thing as we show this as well. And we'll see the 10-year UK treasury. Notice this move up, the 452. We're back up there now, but notice these yields blew out when that happened. And, then went down after the British central bank cut to about 3%. That's kind of what I think is going to happen here. I think that they're going to try to do a budget before these reforms they want to put in get, finalized. They're going to want to do a budget with a lot of tax cuts and no real spending cuts, knowing that deficit spending is short-term stimulative. And then you're going to see something like this happen. What happened in the UK in 2022 is going to happen to the US now. And then maybe Musk and Swami start this plan quicker or put it in quicker and implement it. Look at, man, I'm telling you, like the only thing that's going to change things is bankruptcy, in my opinion. Number one. And number two, like I said, I'm for it. I'm like, let's go. I got no bones about it. I don't care if I piss people off by saying this. Most of those government jobs are useless. Those people need to go in the private sector and become, like people that are productive in society. Okay, whatever. Someone who oversees Social Security, whatever. They're doing good things in the military. I would always respect the people who serve their country. But these ministries, all these nonsense ministries they've set up, and this and that, Ministry of Tourism, this, that, whatever. It's all a waste of time and money. Right. So, you think people aren't coming to your country if you don't have a Ministry of Tourism? Like, come on, get with it. So anyhow, I'll kind of leave it on that note. So that's kind of what I see happening is I agree with this in principle. Doge or whatever you want to call it, it kind of makes it a little bit of a joke though, because they're naming after a coin that's named after a dog. But anyhow, but I agree with it in principle. And I do think that the bureaucracy needs to be dismantled everywhere. I'm Canadian, and Canada is one of the worst places for that. Our big socialist government there. And then, but I do think that there's that saying that the Democrats tax and spend, the Republicans borrow and spend. So I do think you're going to see something happen. And like I said, if this bond keeps moving, lower in the short, if it breaks this is a short-term outtrend here and goes like down here. And rates are at 6%. Well, we can't handle rates of 6%. They were 6% in 2000 because the debt to GDP was 30 or 40%. Now it's 130 or 140%. We can't handle that. So, and then they'll have to print money. They'll have to buy the bonds. They'll have to kind of maybe back off on some of these tax cuts, etc. And I do think something like that could happen. So I hope you enjoyed this. A little bit of a different stock chart of the day, but it was something that I was kind of thinking of. And by the way, maybe what will happen is you'll get something like that happening, and that will trigger the reforms that maybe Musk and Swami want to do, etc. Big tax cuts, etc. Or sorry, big spending cuts, etc. Everybody take care. Have a good one.